Hello, James Flatten here with Minnesota Space Grant Consortium, and I'd like to talk to you about box building, at least the way we like to build boxes for our stratospheric ballooning program. First of all, let me just show you in flight. So here is the launch of a payload stack. So basically there's the balloon, there's a parachute. Here is, well, if you can't see my cursor, first the balloon at the top. Underneath it is a parachute, which is now closed as we ascend. Below that is a radio, one of our tracking radios. And below that, two boxes, literally boxes. These are payload boxes with student-built experiments. If I back up a little bit on the video, I can see the boxes a little bit more carefully. You'll notice they're both black. We prefer to have our boxes painted black because they're warmer that way from the solar irradiation. And then they are tied together with strings. In this case, there are perhaps 4 lines, we call them rigging lines, that go from the bottom box to the box above it, to the radio above that, etc. And so you can build boxes. Well, you can use boxes that are pre-built. I'll show you one in a moment, or you can build your own. My preference is actually to build your own because then you can make the box the size you actually want, and you have to think carefully about that, which I consider a valuable educational experience. But anyway, so there are some boxes in flight going up into a stratospheric condition. Let's take a look at some boxes that I have here with me. So first of all, this is, although it's spray painted black, this is actually a white styrofoam box. Prefab. If I were to open it up, you can see that it's got pretty thick walls. These walls happen to be an inch thick. It's made out of flaky white styrofoam, so not my preferred type of styrofoam to use for boxes, but this was not a box I built. On the other hand, this particular box, as is going to be the case in all boxes, needs a way to attach rigging to it and a way to be sealed up. So let's just take a quick look at how that was done. First of all, I can tell the sealing was done just with tape that went all the way around it. In this case, 2 strips of tape that went all the way around it. One could imagine putting strips in the other direction as well. I can see some evidence of that because every time I put tape on and take it off between flights, I lose some of my paint job. Okay. However, on the side of the box, this is the rigging. So the rigging is made with strings. I have one of these strings at each corner, and the strings run through a piece of tubing. I'll show you this more closely in a minute. And that tubing is taped down here and here, and also zip tied down right here. So the idea is we want the tubing to be well connected to the box, and then the string goes through the tubing. Notice that underneath I have a loop and then a key ring, which allows me to attach the next box to it easily. And then above, this goes up to a loop up here, which allows me to put it onto the key ring of the box above. So this is quite modular. This particular knot at the bottom of the tube prevents the string from going up into the tube. And I've added a knot. This is not necessary, but it's handy for handling at least. I've added a knot right above the tube. So that means that my string doesn't fall down either. So essentially the string is confined here to here. And this allows me to attach boxes, even on the flight line. I don't have to attach them and have long pieces of string wandering around while I'm transporting these things. So consider this a prefab box with rigging added externally. In general, I prefer this. Add the rigging after the box is actually basically finished. Here's another box, but this one was actually built from flat pieces of construction grade styrofoam. It's taped shut. Let's see if I can get it open here. One moment. Yep. Here's time. Knife inside. There we go. So this particular box is made of pink, 1/2 inch thick, essentially what I call construction grade styrofoam. I much prefer this. It's not flaky like that white stuff, and therefore it holds together better. And then this particular box was designed to accommodate very specific things, including here's a window for the ability to either see into the box or have something in the box look out, depending on what you're up to. And this one is covered with black tape as opposed to the other one, which was spray painted black. But in both cases, black is kind of the key, trying to keep these things warmer because the sun will shine on them and they can absorb some of the sunlight. And similar to the other one, it was taped shut when the time was right. This one happens to be empty. The other one happens to have something in it right now. And the things that are inside of it in general will be attached with zip ties. So one of my rules is nothing sticks well to styrofoam. And so you can use Velcro or tape to temporarily place things, but when the time is right for actual flight, I always turn to zip ties, and in particular zip ties that are up to it. So perhaps indoor-outdoor zip ties or metal tang zip ties, not necessarily just indoor-only zip ties. And if it's cold, here in Minnesota, it can get cold. All plastic zip ties sometimes will break in cold weather, and then you really need metal tang zip ties, even though they are more expensive. And both of these have a lid. And so the expectation is you'll have the lid open, you'll do what you need to do, and then you'll close the lid and fly it. It's possible, of course, to have the opening on the side, but it turns out that complicates the rigging because the rigging on this one, very similar to the other one, has tubes in the corners and then those wraps of tape that go all the way around. And that's difficult to do in advance if your opening is on the side. So I prefer top access, but sometimes there are good reasons for not doing it that way. Similar to the other one. So here's a piece of tubing. It's attached with a zip tie in the middle, a strap of tape above it and below it, rigging line that goes through the tubing with a knot at the top and the bottom, and then a key ring down here. And at the other end of this line, well, it turns out that this one, all the lines are tied together, but essentially there's a loop up here. And the reason these are tied together is because this was then attached to a parachute, which didn't have 4 attachment points. So I only attached it at one spot. This particular lid happens to be sort of hinged. That's not necessary, although if you attach the lid and allow it to open, slightly less likely to go missing. Okay, that's where we're headed. Now let's talk about the kinds of materials that I use for putting these things together, especially if you're building your own box. So first of all, the materials and then the tools. So material number one is styrofoam. So this happens to be pink styrofoam. It's billed as 1/2 inch thick. It's actually not exactly 1/2 inch thick, and that can mess up your plans if you're not careful. It's sometimes covered with plastic. This one has a piece of plastic. I'll show you one that has a piece of plastic, and I'll take the plastic off. The plastic coating doesn't stick well to styrofoam. Nothing sticks well to styrofoam. So when you're taping, make sure you go all the way around until the tape sticks to the tape. And if there's plastic which doesn't stick well, here it is. Let me just pull on that a little bit. Comes off way too easily in some sense. And so if you count on the plastic staying on and then the plastic rips off the styrofoam, you can get stuck. So generally speaking, I recommend that you take the plastic coating off the styrofoam before you use it. Okay, so material number one, styrofoam. Material number two, strapping tape. So this is filament tape. It's got filaments in it, so it's really, really, really very strong, at least in this direction. Okay, you must have a knife or a scissors to cut that sort of thing. Here's the tubing. The tubing that I buy is, if I remember correctly, 1/4 inch diameter tubing. This is used for putting ice makers on refrigerators, basically. So it's really tough tubing, and it's intended for use for water, but that's not what we're using it for here. Here's the line that we're using. So this is called braided mason twine. So mason twine is the product, and braided is supposed to twist it. If you buy twisted, it will untwist. You will regret that. Go for the braided mason twine. I buy that at Home Depot. Most of the things I buy at Home Depot, except not key rings. I put key rings on the bottom, and it turns out the Home Depot key rings are poor quality. I tend to buy my key rings at Michael's. So those are the materials. I didn't show you any spray paint or black duct tape for making the things black, but I would also tend to use that at the last moment. And then as far as the actual tools, handy to have a metal square, scissors, knife. I tend to cut the styrofoam with a knife, although you can certainly cut it with other things, including with a table saw, but I don't have a table saw on me right now. Also, zip ties. I guess zip ties are a consumable material in some sense. Something to clip the zip ties with, something to mark styrofoam with. You can do that with a Sharpie. You can't really do that with a normal pencil or pen. And then something to poke holes in the styrofoam. So my favorite would be a metal skewer. You can certainly poke holes with just a screwdriver, although there are right ways and not so right ways to do that. These are my materials and my tools. Let's pull over some pieces for building a box. And let me just tip this down a little bit so you can see the surface. First of all, I have here, a little hard to see, I've already cut out some parts for a pretty tiny box. So I decided I was going to make my box out of 1/2-inch thick material. And this happens to be 5 inches by 4 inches. And then I'm going to have a 3-inch inside. So if I were to start building this, here are, well, first of all, here's this plastic. Let me just get rid of that. I've taken the plastic off the other pieces already. So these things are 4 inches by 3 inches. That allows for a 3-inch inside. Here's my lid. I won't need the lid, so I'll just set that aside. Here's my base. Okay. And then I'm going to take more of the same, 4 inches by 3 inches, and eventually make my full box, minus the lid. Okay. A little hard to hold together. It turns out that here is where you will notice that 1/2 inch is not 1/2 inch. Frankly, I had to take these two pieces and cut them down by about 2 millimeters because they were actually making the thing stick off the edge. So my proposal now is use tape to tape this thing thoroughly. And then once it's taped, you can add rigging to the corners and you can add, but not actually tape onto it, the lid. Okay, so there it is. That's the beginning of my box. Before I start taping, let me just talk a little bit about how I cut these parts out. It turns out that when you cut styrofoam, if you take a very sharp knife, like this one, okay, and if you try to cut it in a single slice, two things will happen. One is you will do it, you'll succeed. And the second thing is your cuts will look like that. Basically, this material does not like to cut all in one slice. So if I took the exact same knife and the exact same material and took my time, I can get my cuts to look like that. Not perfect, but way better. Okay, so suggestion number one, when you're cutting styrofoam, take your time, slice, slice a little bit more, slice a little bit more. 12 slices, approximately. One slice, I was not very pleased with the outcome. Okay. While I'm on the point of styrofoam, let me also say that if you're going to punch holes in styrofoam, as you may well want to do when you're trying to put zip ties through it, well, here's what can happen. If you take an obvious tool for punching a hole, and if you just push it straight through, it will often, maybe not always, but let's see if I can do this. It will often spall on the back end. So I'm going to push this through, and spall in this case means damage more than the diameter you were expecting. Let me try this. There it is. See the extra damage? Okay. So in other words, unnecessarily large on the back side. The right side size here, unnecessarily large here. You can fix that actually. If you're using this sort of a device, just put your fingers over where the point will come out and then use it, twist it, take your time, twist it, take your time, twist it, take your time. And then it will come out nice and neat on the back side as well. So I would say good hole, not such a good hole. Okay, a couple things about dealing with styrofoam. Let me go ahead and show you, no, I'm going to do this sort of in the right order. So I'm going to go ahead and tape up my box. So here we go. My box ready to go. If I have a partner, I could have the partner holding all the parts for me. I don't happen to have a partner when I'm making this video. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use a little bit of tape just to temporarily hold these pieces together, and then I'll come back and do the real taping, shall we say. So here I have my tape. I'm just going to cut off a few relatively short pieces just to start holding things together. And I have a very dull scissors, so that's not going to help me too much. So just cutting. Starters, I'm going to cut 4 pieces of tape. And then I'm going to take each piece of tape and I'm going to actually put a little nick in it, one end, and then pull it apart. So basically now I have 2 pieces of tape that are only half as wide, okay? I didn't need it the full width. This tape is wider than it needs to be. Here's what I'm doing. I'm just going to temporarily tape this corner, this corner, just trying to get the box so it'll hold its shape. And then I will come with my real tape job and go wrapping all the way around it. Okay, so a little bit of tape to hold this corner here. A little bit of tape to hold this corner here. Now I'm going to put a little bit of tape on the bottom corners. This is actually not uncommon where you do something sort of temporary to hold it in place temporarily. Okay, almost done with my temporary taping. And I won't remove this tape. I'm going to tape right over the top of it. Get yourself a sharper scissors than this one. I'm going to stop using the scissors and start using my knife. Don't cut yourself. Okay, here we go. End of my temporary taping. And remember, this is a box with no top. That was intentional. So one problem with this design, frankly, is even after I finish taping it, it will be susceptible to collapse because the tape is only going to be on the outside. You can avoid that by beveling the corners or overlapping the corners somewhat differently, but this is good enough for most purposes. So here I go. This is my plan. My plan is to go all the way around this, perhaps about twice, and then maybe all the way around this way twice, this way twice, this way twice, and then even all the way around this way twice. You might think that's excessive, but remember, nothing sticks well to styrofoam, so you really have to get the tape all the way around until it sticks to itself. And perhaps overlapping a few inches is good, since my box is pretty small. Going all the way around the box twice is only overlapping a few inches. Just have to find the beginning of my tape. It would be nice if the tape was actually the width of the styrofoam thickness, and it's a bit wider than that. So I'm going to end up with a bit of tape on the inside. That's okay. So here we go, all the way around. Okay, so up till now, I would say nothing is sticking well up to this point. And now I'm starting to get some strength by going around the second time. In fact, I'm not going to bother going all the way around. I'm just going to go about 6 inches or so overlap. That's one. I just have to do the other ones. I'm going to intentionally not do the far side and then do these two sides, but rather I'm going to go this side and this side and this side so they kind of overlap one another. It's a little bit better structurally. Here we go. Here. In this case, I'm actually intentionally going a little bit wide so that I can cover that gap. And here. Gap. Some overlap. Okay. Number 3. Overlap. 4. Overlap. Not quite done here. What I want to do now is I want to go around the bottom, in particular to cover that edge. And back to where I started, and I do a little bit of overlap. There it is. So accepting for the fact that it's somewhat susceptible to pressing in, not too bad though. That's a pretty strong box. Now, the lid would go on like that, and if I were to fly it, I would just wrap it shut. Not going to do that right now. Next thing I want to do is I want to add rigging. So let's talk a little bit about rigging. First of all, I have tubes. I've already cut them so that they're the height of the box minus the lid. The reason I intentionally did that is so that they wouldn't stick out when the box didn't have a lid on it, either top or bottom. What that does mean is when the lid is on it, the rigging will attach slightly below the corner because the lid is actually above the rigging. That's okay. So what I'm interested in doing is attaching these to the box and also putting string through these things. Let me show you the string first. So I took one of these pieces and I've already put some string through it. Normally I would put the tubing on the box and add the string later, but let me just show you where I'm headed. So there is a piece of string. It's got a loop at the bottom with a key ring on it. It's got a knot at the top so it doesn't fall through. Right now it won't fall through. And then I have a loop at the very top, ready to reach up to a box above me and attach to its keyring. If every box has keyrings on its bottom corners and loops at the top of its rigging string, they're easy to attach together. So that's where I'm ultimately headed. What I'm going to do, though, is to attach the tubing to the corner of the box. I've actually put what I call flags on the top and the bottom of the tubing, and the flags are sticky so that when I put the tubing on the box, I can put it either on the very corner or on the bigger edge or on the smaller edge. I'm going to choose to put it on the bigger edge. The flags will hold it in place until I'm ready to actually do the full wrapping of tape. So there it is. That's held in place. And let me show you how I make flags and add another one. So then I'll have 2. Okay, so here's one ready to go. And so for flags, I just cut a piece of tape about that long and then I cut it in half. Already did that. So sticky towards you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it at the very end of the tube around. There it is. So the stickiness is towards the camera. And it only is about half of the length here. And I'm going to take a second one and put that on the opposite side. Make sure the stickiness is also still towards the camera. If you're very cool about it, you can make these things at 90 degrees to each other approximately, because they are going on a corner after all. There it is, ready to go on a corner. Sticky here, sticky here. Let me just do the other two. One very close to the bottom, making sure they're sticky in the same way as the top ones. There we go. One more, sticky the same as the top ones. The reason I'm doing this is it holds it to the box, and it also, once it's been fully taped, prevents the tubes from migrating underneath the wraps of tape, which can happen. Okay, so flags ready to go on the box. I'll put it on the corner right next to that one. So this one has one, and so I'm just going to go down to the other end of that same side. Put my tube right in the corner. Right in the corner. Okay, so now I have two tubes on. Normally I would add two tubes on the other side. Let me just go ahead and finish the taping. So what will happen is, as I wrap this thing with tape, it will cover this flag as well as the flag that's below it. So a single wrap of tape will cover both. Let's see that happen. Don't cover the end of the tubing, because the end of the tubing is where the string will have to go in. Okay, so here we go. Around tubing. Reach the end, a little bit of overlap. Cut that. Okay, so that's one done. Now let me do the corresponding one on this side. I'll keep blowing on this thing because there's little bits of styrofoam from my cutting of these parts that is lurking. Move it around. Time to overlap. Just a little bit. Okay, fine. Before I put any string in this thing, let me show you what I would do. One more thing to hold this securely. So pretty much that seems very secure, although you'd be surprised at how nasty things can get in the stratosphere. I'm going to put a zip tie over the middle of that tube, okay, in addition to the fact that I have tape above it and tape below it. So the way to do that is literally use a poker. In this case, I'm going to use this skewer of mine, and I'm going to run it right through there so that it will go through this side and around the corner. Okay, so here we go. I'm not going to bother. I'm not doing this with that screwdriver I used earlier. This happens to be a flat skewer, and it's actually very handy. So I'm going to go in about 2 inches here. I'm going to poke out about 2 inches there. It will actually penetrate, and I'll be able to see it just a little bit inside there. Here we go, and I want to do it halfway down. Here we go. I'm kind of wiggling it, wiggling it, wiggling it. There it is. It's spalled a little bit. Going into the next side. It's harder to do if you happen to puncture a place that is covered by tape, but in fact, I'm not doing that. So there it is, ready to go. I can even see it right there, just barely. Now the question is how to get a zip tie to follow that hole that's in the tube. If I pull this out and try to feed a zip tie through, I'll struggle a lot. I know that from experience. So here's what I'm going to do instead. I'm going to put my skewer back in. It will go right where it went before, since it's a solid object. Okay. And then I'm going to take my zip tie, and although they're both black, so you will have a hard time seeing it, I'm going to lay the zip tie right on top of the skewer. Okay, or I could do it underneath, I guess. Which way do I want to do it? I want to do it underneath the skewer now that I think about it. Make sure that you pay attention to the business end of the zip tie and which end it has to wrap so as to be able to click properly. Okay, so I'm going to take the zip tie. Oh, there it is, zip tie. And I'm going to put it underneath the skewer. Then I'm going to use the skewer. I'm just going to push them both together. And so the zip tie just goes right with the skewer and comes out the far end. Pretty nifty. And then I can pull the skewer out. The zip tie is ready to be zipped. So my proposal is I'm going to go around, get this ready to zip. And I would suggest every time you're using zip ties to try to let the tail end interfere with you as little as possible. So in this case, pull quite tight. You might even say that I'm damaging the material, but I pull that really quite tight. And then I'm going to use my clippers to clip that off. If I chose to put another one over here, and I would, but this is a demonstration, so I'll just do one. When all is said and done, I would probably run one more wrap of tape right over the top of the zip ties. So I'll just do that right now. The reason for that is to cover up this slightly scratchy edge, and also, frankly, to cover up these slightly damaged holes right there. So here, when I pulled it tight, I actually did some damage to the surface. So if I pull this over, I will at least try to keep that from being a dramatic hole in the side of my box, possibly more than one. And this just gives me a little more strength also. Clearly, I'm not maybe worrying as much as you might expect about weight. I'm not adding a lot of weight, but I'm also definitely going for strength and not worrying too much about whether or not I have a little bit of extra weight. So there it is. One zip tie in place, two tubes in place. One is not zip tied, and two tubes not in place. Now is the time to put the strings in. Let's go ahead and put the string in the one that's most complete. Okay, so here we go. Take a piece of string, and I'm going to put what we call a ballooning knot. I don't even know the name of the formal name of this knot. So I'm going to take, if you took a piece of string and were to put a knot in it, just take the thing, loop it, and then there it is. There's a knot. I'm not going to pull it tight, but if you call that the basic knot, what I want to do is I want to do a basic knot of that sort on the string one that's looped over on itself. Okay, so here's how I do it. I take the string, I lay it on my hand, and then I loop it over. So now I have a loop that literally is the width of my hand. There it is. But it's got two strings parallel to each other now, and I'm going to put that basic knot right in the middle of that loop. Okay, so when I do that, here is what ends up happening. I end up with a pretty big knot, which won't go through a tube, and a loop, which might be about an inch or so. Try to make them all the same size. Okay, so here it is. Now I'm going to take this tube. Since this is the bottom, that's where the key ring will go. I feed it up from the bottom through my tube. Feeding it up from the bottom. There we go. And then I'm going to, at the top here, I'm going to tie a knot. Just a real basic, this is basic knot as you can imagine. What I'm doing though is I'm trying to tie that knot as close to the tube as possible. So there it is, the knot is right at the top of the tube. And it turns out that that knot is not big enough. That knot will fall through the tube if I were to pull on it. So I'm going to put a second knot. And the second knot I'm going to put underneath. In other words, even closer to the tube than the first knot. And even that is often not big enough. So I'm going to put a third knot. There it is, a third knot underneath the first two. So now I have this pretty monstrous knot at the top, and I have this knot at the bottom. I'll put a key ring on the bottom. This key ring, the weight of this key ring would pull the string through the tube, and it would keep falling out, and it would be annoying to hold it just like this. It would keep falling out unless you put the knot in the top. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put another loop, another ballooning knot at the very top. So again, I wrap it over my hand. So now I have that much string doubled over, and then I put a basic knot in the middle of that. There it is, ready to attach to the payload above me. Okay. That's it for building boxes. This is awfully small, probably too small to be practical. You need to build your box a reasonable size. For instance, big enough. In fact, here's something to think about. Make sure the box is big enough that you can put the things in it that need to be in it, and also get your hands in it to turn those things on, assuming that those things are press the button here, plug this in, whatever. So just be careful. It's a good idea to plan carefully when you're building a box and make sure that concise is good, compact is good, but you can go too far. It's quite possible to design something that you can't build and to build something that you can't actually use. So this is an intentionally small box just for the purpose of demonstrations with lots of tape and one of ultimately 4 strings for rigging purposes. And then of course, ultimately the lid goes on the top. One could imagine putting this lid on so as to hinge it, although that's sort of optional. Notice that when you do that, this knot is outside of the lid, so this thing can still pull straight up like that. Whether the lid is on or not, it won't interfere with the rigging. That's what I got for now.